9部分911事件与神的名被揭晓的时机。麦克儒德是一位善于讲故事的圣经教师，或许是因为他敏感于神做事情的方式，毕竟整个人类历史都是他的故事。911事件当天，地球两端同时发生的两件事，在麦克和尼希米的人生经历中烙下了深刻的属灵印记。就在第一架和第二架波音飞机分别撞入世贸中心的时刻，身在以色列希伯来大学从事希伯来圣经勘校工作的尼希米，也迎来他人生苦苦寻求的一个重要答案，关于神名字的发音。如果您也知道恐怖分子操控飞机撞击大楼的一刹那所呼喊的名字是安拉至大，你就不会惊讶这件事和尼希米在同一时机的发现有着怎样激烈的灵界对撞。耶和华神他那被隐藏千年的名字被人们知道。然而，神的名字并非第一次进入人们视野。早在上世纪90年代，人们就将列宁格勒抄本全部录入电脑。在这份手抄本里，有50多次出现带有全部原音的耶和华神的名字，却没有人意识到其重要性。相比之下，尼希米对这一名字的渴慕、祷告和寻求，让我们看到一位遵守妥拉的犹太人对这份信仰的诚实。尼希米朴实严谨的讲述风格，令人动容的信仰追问，和对希伯来圣经的单纯信念，再次见证了神在他所拣选的犹太人当中存留的那一份独有的恩膏和智慧。
For the past 4 weeks, we have been in the studio with Hebrew scholar Nehemiah Gordon, and we have been allowing the Jews to interpret all the scriptures the Jews wrote. And at the end of the series, we promised we would give plenty of time for the Gentiles to interpret all the scriptures the Gentiles wrote. I really hate to see this come to an end because there are very few people out there on planet Earth that I have access to that I can learn from. But when I'm with Nehemiah, over these past 18 years that I've known him, he's 20 years younger than I am. He's young enough to be my son, but yet anytime I get together with Nehemiah and the time that we spent together here, it's just... I get to immerse myself in such wisdom and knowledge in the scripture that I just don't get to do from any other source. And so it has been my privilege to share his life with you. And I want to take you to a particular incident that is extremely important, an incident that wove our lives together in a way that I could not have expected. And we go back to the week of September 3rd of 2001. I was in Costa Rica. I had just finished up working on a project, and I was praying, and I heard the voice of the Almighty. By the Spirit, I heard while praying, get a bag, pack it, get to America, and get all of your material, get everything out of America, get it down to Costa Rica immediately. So the next day, I was on a plane. I flew up. I got all my materials out of America down to Costa Rica. As soon as I arrived, I went out to dinner with some friends, and I said, I feel such an urgency that there's something I need to do right now. I don't know what it is. And then Frank Hawks looked across the table and said, you need to go to Iceland. I said, that's it. I need to go to Iceland. Never thought of Iceland a day in my life. Here I am in a tropical paradise, Costa Rica, and the next thing is go to Iceland. Well, what I didn't know was going on that very week in Iceland is that the news media was playing over and over and over the words of the crazy man from Israel. That week, a man came from Israel and was on the news media that was broadcast all week long that the Muslims were about to do something so dramatic that would change the entire world. He was called a racist, a bigot, the crazy man from Israel, and at the end of the week, he got on a plane, but yet they kept playing that press release, him actually saying this on Icelandic television over and over and over, and at the end of the week, on Sunday, he got on a plane and went back to Israel. On Sunday, I was on a plane for Iceland. I arrived after spending the night in Baltimore, waiting for the next flight to get over there. I arrived and having no idea why I was there. I prayed with the people that picked me up, having never met them before. I said, I have no idea why I'm here. Will you pray with me? As we prayed outside of Inge's bed and breakfast there outside of Reykjavik, I knew that when I woke up, I would have the answer. A few hours later, slamming fist on the door. And that was when Inge opened the door, flung it open and said, something terrible has just happened in America. And I said, that is what I was waiting for. Not knowing what I was waiting for. Put on my house coat, walked in the other room, and I stood there and watched the second plane hit the World Trade Center. What I didn't know that was going on at that very time, which is in the middle of the afternoon in Israel, something profound that the Almighty was doing. Not only had the warning come from Israel to Iceland, in that day I was on national television. I was on national television all week long because I had a message to deliver, and I didn't know what it was until I got there. But I did not know that what was happening in Israel at that very hour, and would not find out for years, was something that would change my life and would have something major to do with what our program is today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let Nehemiah Gordon tell us a story of what happened on that afternoon in Israel, that morning in New York City. Nehemiah, tell the story.
Thanks, Michael. So I was kind of minding my own business. I was working on my master's degree at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem back in 2001, and I had a little research position which was on something called the Hebrew University Bible Project. And what I would do is I would sit there in this office with no windows, and the walls were lined with books, thousands and thousands of books, and I would just sit there with my stack of photographs and a stack of printed pages, and my job was to proofread what's called the Aleppo Codex. That's the most accurate copy of the Bible in existence. It was written in the year 924, completed 924 in Tiberias by the master scribe Aaron ben Asher. And to this day, when they want to print a Bible in Hebrew, they base it on the Aleppo Codex. So my job was to make sure the printing they were doing at Hebrew University was perfect, matching the Aleppo Codex. It was very tedious.
And you were like, well back in the line. You were proofing proofreaders who were proofing proofreaders.
It had already been checked 3 times at least, or maybe I was the third. And coming along, it had been done already. Meaning by the time I got there, I'd sometimes sit there for 8 hours and checking every little minutia of jot and tittle, and it was perfect. So you're kind of going crazy because you're looking for the mistakes. That's my job, to find mistakes, and there are no mistakes. It's perfect. So I'm sitting there and I'm doing my job, and one of the things that at that point for years I had been praying, it was a prayer I had, which is I wanted to know how to pronounce the Father's name. As I went through my studies at Hebrew University of Jerusalem, one of the things I've been told is that we don't know the vowels of the Father's name, of the name Yud-He-Vav-He. We know the consonants, no question about the consonants. They appear 6,827 times in the Aleppo Codex, but we don't know how to pronounce that. Because in Hebrew, the vowels and the consonants are written as 2 different sets of symbols. The consonants are 22 consonants, letters, and then the vowels are a series of dots and dashes above and below and inside the letters. So my prayer was, Father, I want to call on your name. And I had read entire books with theories explaining, well, really it's pronounced Yahweh, and really it's pronounced Yehovah, and really it's pronounced, you name it. And each one had some really good arguments. But at the end of the day, I said, well, how do I know which one is the truth? What I really want, my prayer was to be able to see it, definitive evidence in the Word of God, in the Bible. Right? The Bible was preserved for us by these master scribes who were just very meticulous in their details. They preserved the pronunciation of words from one period of history and another period of history within the biblical time. It's very precise, and I thought, if only I could see how it was written in these early vocalized manuscripts, the manuscripts with vowels. But of course, as I had this job, one of the things I saw and I'd seen before is that they don't have the full set of vowels. Now, one of the things I was told, and everyone knows, it's a fact, it's common knowledge, which is that the vowels of the name Yud He Vav He in the Bible are the vowels of Adonai, which means Lord. And I immediately saw, as I was reading these manuscripts, that was simply, it was a fact and it was common knowledge, but it was factually untrue. Like, provably, definitively just untrue.
Okay. Now, this is coming from someone whose actual job it is to be a proofreader, proofreaders, so that the scientific, the most accurate version of the most important Hebrew document in the Jewish world is accurate.
Right.
And so this isn't,
right.
You know.
Well, but really, you didn't have to be a proofreader to see that when you looked in the mass manuscripts of the Bible, and particularly at that time I had access to the Leningrad Codex and the Aleppo Codex, you'd be like me saying I have a full set of purple hair, right? You don't need to be a hairdresser to know that that's not true, right?
It's that obvious.
It was that obvious that the name Yud He Vav He did not have the vowels of Adonai. In fact, what it had were two vowels, and there was clearly a third vowel that was missing.
Why is that clear that the third vowel was missing?
Well, first of all, it just was missing. It was, in other words, every letter in Hebrew in that context, there's a few exceptions, but basically every letter in a word in Hebrew has to have a vowel attached to it. If it's at the end of a syllable, then it has a certain symbol that marks that. You know, the exception would be like a final He, which actually the name does have. But the first three letters of Yud, He, Vav, He, that Yud, He, and Vav had to have some vowel symbol associated with it. Even if it was the end of a syllable, there had to be some symbol associated with each letter.
So you would say it's unpronounceable?
It was absolutely unpronounceable. In other words, it was intentionally written repeatedly in both the Leningrad Codex and the Aleppo Codex in a way that no Jewish reader who read Hebrew, whether it was the simplest farmer or the master scribe, would be able to read it the way it was written. It was impossible to read. And this was very frustrating to me. And I had noticed this sometime before. And I had this prayer. It was this burning desire. Father, I want to know what your name is. And not based on some man's theory, but the way it was preserved by the scribes. But the scribes didn't preserve it a way I could pronounce it. So I'm sitting there minding my own business, and I'm looking through, and you have to understand, on every page of the Bible, I'm looking at 4 sets of symbols that I have to make sure are copied exactly precisely. We have consonants, vowels, accents, and what's called Masoretic notes. And it's my job to make sure those 4 sets of symbols in the Aleppo Codex are transferred to this printed Bible. And like I said, it had been done before, and really the type of thing I was finding is, there's a little a Masoretic note and it's in the wrong position, so let's correct that and move it. I mean, it was relatively trivial things that I was able to find because it was just so precisely done. And as I was doing this, I would come across the name Yud He Vav He, saw it all the time, almost on every page, and noticed day after day that one of the vowels was missing, making it unpronounceable. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and I find a place where the missing vowel is not missing. And it was Ezekiel 3:12, and it says, Baruch kavod Yehovah mimakomo. Blessed is the glory of Yehovah from his place. And I looked at that word Yud He Vav He, which was unpronounceable, and all of a sudden it had a full set of vowels, which were Yehovah. And just at that moment I get a phone call, and the voice on the other end of the phone says, a plane just flew in the World Trade Center. And I thought, that's some kind of fluke. I didn't know. I didn't have internet access. I didn't, have a smartphone. They didn't exist yet. All I knew was this person on the other end of the phone said a plane. I figured it was like a Cessna or something, like crop duster, some small thing. I don't know. I put down the phone. I'm not even thinking about that. Maybe that was some kind of accident. What I'm thinking about is this a fluke? I just found the name with full vowels in the manuscript, in the Aleppo Codex, the most accurate manuscript. So I said, okay, I'm putting aside my work. My job is to check 4 sets of symbols. I'm going to check one word. And I'm going to just skim the pages, looking just for that one word to find a second witness. And I'm skimming the pages, page after page, keep coming across Yud He Vav He, the name of the Father, and the vowels missing again, unpronounceable. And I thought, well, it was at one time. I need a second witness. I'm flipping, and then all of a sudden, after about 15 minutes, I come across it. It's Ezekiel 28:22,
Again in Ezekiel.
As again in Ezekiel. This one's actually really significant. It's a prophecy, and I was reading Ezekiel, that's why I found it there. It's a prophecy about Sidon, and it says, and you shall prophesy concerning it, and you shall say, thus says Lord Yehovah. And Yehovah there had the full vowels, Yehovah. And what's interesting there is by tradition, when the word Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh appears next to Adonai, which is Lord, you're to read it as Elohim, which is God. And so not only was this a full set of vowels showing you the name as Yehovah, by tradition, those are not the vowels that should have been in this word, yet those are the vowels the scribe put in there. And then I get a second phone call, and the person told me, a second plane just flew into the World Trade Center. And I realized, you know what, that wasn't an accident. At that time, I had no idea who was behind it, but I knew that was on purpose. And this couldn't be just an accident either. This was something this isn't a fluke, that's for sure I knew. Now, I didn't realize the full significance. It took me time to process both things, both what happened on 9/11, probably like it did for many people, and also what happened here, what I had found. And what I didn't fully realize the significance until the 10th anniversary of 9/11. I was speaking to a friend and telling, reminiscing about what had happened. And he said, "Do you realize the significance of that timing?" And I'll be honest, there's this expression, people who miss the forest for the trees. I'm not looking at the trees. I'm looking at the leaves under a microscope at the cells of the leaves, and I miss even the tree. I'm a detail-oriented person. It's just in my nature. So I had missed this. He said, "Do you realize at that exact moment when those terrorists flew their planes into the towers and they shouted out the name of their God?" Because that's what they do.
Allahu Akbar.
That's what they do.
Allah is greater.
They proclaim the name of their God because their God is death, but they proclaim the name of their God because they're doing this in the name of their God, their death. And at that moment, the creator of the universe halfway across the world wanted his name to be known and allowed me to find this. And I'm the one who found it and didn't realize the full significance of that. And you have to understand, I really struggled with even sharing this because the tradition I come from, the Jewish tradition, really frowns on anything too spiritual. No, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. In fact, I was sharing this at a conference a few years ago, and this old Jewish man comes up to me and says, "Why did you have to share the thing about the towers and the planes? Just show us what's in the manuscript." and that's the tradition I came from. But looking back now, this, to me, I'm convinced more than ever that this is the hand of God. And I'm going to share something which I just told you the other day, and I just discovered myself. And I didn't know this on 9/11. I didn't know it on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. I found this out very recently. So one of the things I didn't know is how many times in the Aleppo Codex does the name appear with the full vowels? So the Aleppo Codex is the Bible. There are pages that are missing. So from the surviving pages, we have the name appearing about 4,000 times. And the question I had for years is how many times does the name appear with the full vowels in the Aleppo Codex? But the Aleppo Codex is about 600 pages that have survived. And I had looked through about 100 of them, and I found a third place. And, my assumption was that if you spent an hour, you would find another place, and another hour, another place. If you knew what you were looking for, that maybe every 30, 40 pages you'll find one. That was my assumption, right? Because I had found it within 15 minutes twice. So I'm sure if you did that and you had the eye for it, you'd find it twice, about every 15 minutes, half hour, hour. Well, so recently I was working together with this gentleman who I call T-Bone. And I had trained him through this interaction I had with how to find the name with the full vowels in manuscripts. Now, he started out not reading Hebrew at all. And he could identify the 4 letters of the Father's name.
Right.
And he had this passion, this desire to try to find the Father's name with full vowels in more places. So I said, "Okay, you've done a few manuscripts. We've worked together on that. Would you like to do the Aleppo Codex?" It's about, I think it's 594 pages that have survived, something like that. It's nearly 600 pages. And I figured I'm going to hear from him in 2 or 3 years. 3 days later, he contacts me. He said, "Okay, I went through the whole thing." The whole thing? And he sent me a list of places where he found it with the full vowels. I checked every single one. In some of them, he was wrong. In some of them, I'm like, "Oh, no, that's mold." Or that's, that's not a vowel. That's an accent mark called Ravia Mugrash. There's all kinds of things, little dots and dashes. You have to know what you're looking at. But at the end, it turned out there were 6 clear, definitive places that had the full vowels in the Aleppo Codex. In the entire thing. Out of 4,000 places, there's only 6 with the full vowels. And I found 2 of those on 9/11. And guess what? There's only 2 in the book of Ezekiel. If I had been reading in the book of Jeremiah that day, I wouldn't have even found 1, let alone 2. If I'd been reading in the book of Isaiah, I would have found 1, but not 2. It was only in Ezekiel that I could have found those 2 in that span of time in those sections that I happened to be reading. And I didn't realize this. I thought, okay, well, this is clearly the hand of God. After years, I came to accept that I found it at this timing. But there was a dimension I didn't even know about until recently. That 6 times. And I want to share the other times with the people. I'm going to show it here on the screen. So,
okay. Now,
can we do that?
Yeah, we can do that. But let me interrupt this because, what happened for me, is years later, I was working on the book of the Revelation. And this, the name of insult was really something, a name of blasphemy. It speaks of the name of blasphemy. Yeah. And, I'm trying to work this thing through. And this name of blasphemy, it just hit me. This, as we're hearing more and more, as we know, there is a Muslim terrorist act that is happening someplace in the world every day, and most days it's several times a day in the world.
Right. If you take the entire world, that's true.
That's right. So it's not America is not the center of the universe here. Mm-hmm. We've got all over the world. This is happening. And what is it that we hear just before in Israel? How many times we hear the last thing they say is Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater. And then bam, they blow themselves up, blow whatever up. And so I looked at this. What is a greater insult than to say this fictitious moon god is greater than the God of Israel? Mm-hmm. The name of insult really hit. And then realizing then when I heard your testimonies of what happened when you found it, at the very moment these people are crying out Allahu Akbar. And this prophet from Israel came and said the Muslims to Iceland to say the Muslims were about to do something that was going to change the world.
I'd never even heard that before. That's interesting.
And then I arrived the day after he gets on a plane and leaves, and I'm the one that goes on national television because I'm told in Costa Rica, get on a plane and get to Iceland without having any idea why I'm there. And so that very day that really changed the world, he is not going to let his name be unknown. You had been seeking it your whole life. You've been crying out to him. You want to know, and you're one of the few people that actually have the skill level. I mean, there are no, nobody who graduates from an America seminary with Hebrew background that is paid to be a proofreader on the most important manuscript on the planet.
I'll tell you something, Michael. I can tell you as a fact that other people discovered this before me. In other words, there was a group of people who took the Leningrad Codex, typed up every jot and tittle into a computerized form, and it was right there. So they had, with their fingers, typed those letters, typed the full vowels, and they didn't realize the significance of what they were typing up, evidently, because they didn't. As far as I know, nobody pointed this out and said, oh, here's the name with the full vowels that you normally doesn't have. For example, the Aleppo Codex is 6,800, and that one is 28 times, and of those, about 50 have the full vowels. And even though
that's in the Leningrad
Codex, which is considered the second most important manuscript of the Bible after the Aleppo, so they had typed that up in the 90s, and they clearly had seen it, yet they didn't, as far as I know, didn't say, hey, over 6,000 times the name is unpronounceable, except for about 50 times here it is pronounceable. They didn't put 2 and 2 together, even though literally their eyes were on it and they were typing it. They didn't, because they weren't asking the question. Right? They were, as far as I know, they weren't even asking the question. They weren't looking for an answer. And I was, as you said, calling out and praying, Father, I want to call on your name, and not according to the traditions of men, not according to someone's theory, not according to someone's hypothesis, but based on the oracles of God, the way it was preserved by the Hebrew scribes. And until you ask that question, you could be staring it right in the face, and it won't matter. You won't realize the significance of it.
And as an Orthodox Jew, you come from the background of never pronouncing the name, having no idea, and it was absolutely verboten. Right.
Oh, and certainly as an Orthodox Jew, I knew the letters were Yud He Vav He, but no, even as an Orthodox Jew, I don't even think that was a question that I spent too much time on, really. It was, even when I became a Karaite, there was something kind of deep in my psyche where, let's just not go there. That's kind of scary, until things were just like thrown in my face, like seeing the silver scrolls of the priestly blessing from 650 BC, and it says, and they shall place my name on the children of Israel, and there it's written in Paleo-Hebrew. It's like, well, how can I ignore that? That's actually, the name that it says they'll place my name on the children of Israel appears in Paleo-Hebrew, Yud-He-Vav-He. And at that phase, I wasn't necessarily thinking of how to pronounce it. That wasn't so much the issue, but that's the name, right? Yeah. Like, and that, you can't place Adonai on the children of Israel and bless them. That's not what it says. Right. That's not what God instructed the sons of Aaron. It's placing the name.
That's right, and there are no
Yehovah.
miracles that happen in that context. But placing his name, we've seen the miracles. You've seen miracles happen, people calling on the name.
I think God can do miracles whenever he wants. And he doesn't, he doesn't need us to.
Fair enough.
So for me, what was significant is here we have the name in the manuscripts. It's not a theory. It's a fact that it's written as Yehovah. And at the time, I knew about it, really up until a year ago. I knew about it in 4 manuscripts, and about a year ago I found the 5th manuscript. As we're speaking now, I know of the name in over 50 manuscripts.
These
early
are
Masoretic
manuscripts of the Bible.
Manuscripts of the Bible, written by the Jewish scribes. If you include later Masoretic manuscripts, it's far more than 50. I'm just looking at the earlier ones that have vowels. And can I share some of these?
I'm going to interrupt. One last thing, because I don't want to interrupt after this, because I have an idea where you're going on this. But 2001, that is when, I went from Iceland, moved everything to Israel, and that's when I moved there permanently, began the production, and I did my episode on the name. Okay? Now, Yahweh has been his name like forever for me, okay? And once I did that particular episode of A Rude Awakening, and this was duplicated. It was in every country of the world, and eventually hundreds of thousands of these episodes are out there. I had made my commitment, and I really didn't want to listen to what he had to say, okay? Just honestly, I have too much invested in this, and yet, when the evidence started to come out, and I said, no, I have got to be honest. I have got to listen to what he says. I've seen the miracles. I've seen the hand of the Almighty lead Nehemiah. I've seen him led by the Spirit, which broke all the rules that I was raised with. Okay, God can't speak to a Jew, okay, who's not a believer in Yeshua. That's where I was coming from, ladies and gentlemen. I have to admit. But yet I saw the hand of the Almighty lead him into the most amazing things that had perplexed me. And without him, I could never have published this, because I wouldn't have had the final answer on the genealogy of Yeshua without Nehemiah. And it's because at that point I said, I've got to look at this. And when I did, and then I prayed for a miracle, for a woman to be raised from the dead in the name of Yehovah. That was the final thing. I said, if you want me, it's now my responsibility to help get this message out, in that I am to stand behind Nehemiah 100%. I'm asking you to raise this woman from the dead, and that is exactly what happened. Our whole staff was here to see that very event take place. Wow. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, listen up. You are listening to the Spirit of the living God leading us in this day and time. Well, Yeshua said, I will send you the Spirit to lead you into all truth. You will see how that is now come to manifest. And so, Nehemiah, I'm just going to shut up.